Tennessee had a huge recruiting month in June in terms of what it needed to do. There was a lot of expectations on the Vols going into 2023, but this was the first year we felt that they could recruit with the credibility of Josh Heupel, given what they've done. So the question becomes, did they do what they needed to do on the recruiting trail in June? And that's a big question, because here's what you need to understand. And again, I encourage you guys to all go back and look at Dave Hooker's article on this in early June, because this was the real story at that time. In case you forgot, Tennessee, Josh Heupel's biggest recruiting month was June, because June is always a big recruiting month now for the next class. 2024 is his most crucial recruiting class. It'll be the first class that he puts together with the credibility of the success that he's had at Tennessee. And it will be the one that builds what they can do long term, because what they've been doing so far at Tennessee is, and we can just say this, we know this from reports, opening the NIL checkbook and lowering the transfers they need and the specific talent they need for Josh Heupel to be able to run his system, to build the credibility he needs to be able to then go recruit the 4-year guys. This is the year that he needs to recruit the 4-year guys that can fully build and stack his roster. And he specifically needs to focus in the trenches. Taking that into account, I'm going to say right now, Josh Heupel's recruiting for June is incomplete. Look, June was the one that you wanted him to get all the big commitments on, but Tennessee is still in the running for a lot of big fish who chose to not commit in June this year, which is a little bit shocking. It's just a little bit delayed. So even though on paper, Heupel did not do what he wants to do in June, there's just no way around that. Tennessee did not do what it needs to do on the recruiting trail in June. There's still plenty out there for them to be excited about. I mean, they already got an early start with Jordan Burns and Max Anderson. Those are two solid pickups, particularly Max Anderson on the offensive line. That's a huge pickup for Tennessee football. I can't stress that enough coming out of Texas. 6'5", 305 roughly pounds. I think he's probably, if he puts on more weight and maintains his quickness, he'll play outside, but he's more of an interior offensive lineman. But that's fine, because Josh Heupel's system, interior offensive linemen are very, very crucial because of the running game that he relies on so heavily. So Max Anderson is a big pickup. He needs like 3 more of those, honestly. And luckily for him in Tennessee, the expectations we put on them to be able to recruit this way in June have now been modified, because there are just so many people that Tennessee is targeting right now that have not made their commitment and won't make their commitment until later, probably this month. So we're going to have to see how that goes. Now, as for where they stand in the SEC, Tennessee is 4th. Georgia's number 1, Florida's number 2, and LSU is number 3, according to the 247 Sports Composite. I will say that specifically is not a bad sign for Tennessee. And the reason that specifically is not a bad sign for Tennessee is none of us really think Florida's recruiting is going to last. I think Florida was struggling because of decommitments and the NIL disaster that happened with Jaden Rashada. And Billy Napier made a push to get all the guys he has that were silent commitments, but not vocal commitments. He made a push for them to go ahead and make their commitments so Florida could get some momentum on the trail. I think they're slowly but surely going to sink down the list. Ohio State got a big pickup on the trail the other day. Florida is still doing okay. They moved back ahead of Michigan after falling to 4th. They're back up in 3rd. But it's really down to Georgia and Ohio State on the trail over who has the best recruiting class in college football right now. Florida, 3rd. Clear-cut 3rd, but not a distant 3rd. And then Michigan is a distant 4th, and everything else is pretty distant after that. But again, I think that's all going to work itself out. Florida will stay where they are. Trust me on this. Michigan 4th, USC 5th, Notre Dame 6th, Penn State 7th, Oregon 8th, LSU 9th, and Tennessee 10th. So the verdict is in on paper. They didn't do what they needed to do. We have to say that. We have to call it what it is. Tennessee needs 2 or 3 more trench players on both sides of the ball for us to say that this class was what they needed in the summer. And they just don't have that. They got 1 guy in the trenches. Now, right at that time, you bring up a good point. There's the offensive tackle war. There's a couple offensive linemen that Tennessee could still go after that they are still targeting. And that's why I gave this an incomplete. There are edge rushers there are guys like Elijah Rushing too on the defensive side that they're still targeting. A lot of guys that just haven't committed yet that we thought that typically do commit in June, but just have decided not to. And this could be a good sign for Tennessee. Maybe they're targeting bigger fish now meaning their great recruits will come later in the year because some of the better players typically commit a little bit later than the other ones. And Odd Sport says you don't want to do like Florida and throw NIL at players and forget your current roster. Odd Sport, that is absolutely true to a degree. I think it's fine to throw NIL at players. You just have to make sure you have your NIL money at line, which Florida does not have. And so we can't really say for sure exactly how this is going to end up and what's going to play out. But what we can say is that as of right now, Tennessee has some issues that aren't long-term issues yet that could be addressed, but you need the month of July to do it. And so what was June as the most crucial recruiting month for Heupel has now been expanded into June and July. And without both of those months, again, if you get to August and you don't have some commitments, you got a real concern. I mean, guys, you have a real concern there if that happens. Tennessee football needs to pick up some guys, and they need to pick them up fast because there are some, not just to mention, yes, they have a top 10 class right now, and it's fourth in the SEC. But Alabama is not going to stay down at number 22. Again, when you talk about big fish to fry, Alabama gets their commitments a little bit later. They're going to shoot up. Texas A&M has a large NIL collective. They're number 12. Now, I personally think the bottom's going to fall out of Texas A&M this fall, which will help, but we don't know that for sure. Clemson is right on Tennessee's tail at number 11. And honestly, in terms of commitments, I would argue Clemson has a better class. Clemson has 9 4-stars, 2 5-stars. Tennessee just has 10 4-stars and 5 3-stars to Clemson's 2 3-stars. I think that's a little bit ridiculous just to look at that and say that Tennessee's class is better. That's just on raw numbers alone. So honestly, when you look at this class all the way down, Tennessee probably has it's probably tied with Texas A&M for the 11th best class. Tennessee and Texas A&M are probably number 11. And then right on their tail, there's still South Carolina with 8 4-star commitments. There's Florida State with 9 4-star commitments and a 5-star commitment. So Florida State might have a case over. Actually, they do have a case over Tennessee. So honestly, Tennessee's probably closer to 12th in this class. So Tennessee has a lot of work to do on the trail, and that makes July a major recruiting month. So we're going to have to pay attention to that long term, because if Tennessee doesn't have to have, I've said this for a while, they don't have to have a top 5 class to win championships. Heupel can scheme out of a class at maybe 5 to 7 range or top 10. He can out scheme teams with better recruiting talent than he's got, but the gap can't be too large. So the gap, it can't be he's facing Georgia with the number 1 class or Alabama with the number 2 class, and he's got the 20th class, okay, or the 15th class. It's got to be in the 5 to 7 range. 8 to 10 is pushing it, man. 8 to 10 is pushing it. So like 7 is that magic number. You got to get to that top 7 class, and he's not there right now. And that's what makes July such a crucial month. Is if he doesn't get there, then there are going to be many issues going forward.